Okoy Mighty Revival. There was a controversy among the leaders of the Faith Tabernacle in Nigeria over some doctrines. In the midst of it were, in particular, the Elisa and Oyan branches of the tabernacle. The Oyan branch was under the supervision of Pastor J. A. Babalola, a notable Anglican teacher. Before his conversion and later, one of the outstanding leaders of the Faith Tabernacle in Nigeria. Issues like the use of Western and traditional drugs versus divine healing, polygamy, and whether polygamous husbands should be allowed to partake of the Lord's Supper, were among those doctrines that needed to be agreed on. These issues had caused dissension at the Isa Tabernacle, and in order to avoid a split, a delegation of peacemakers made up of all leading Faith Tabernacle pastors was sent to Elisa. It was headed by Pastor J.B. Cincinnati of I.G. Buode, president of the general headquarters of the movement, and D.O. Ajabanjo of the Lagos missionary headquarters. The Elisa meeting was scheduled for the 9th and 10th of July 1930. The Apostolic Council of Jerusalem in AD 48, and other important church councils, are precedents in seeking ecclesiastical direction on matters affecting the life and peace of the church. Before the delegation left Lagos for Elisa, Babalola had been invited to meet the leaders at Pastor I.B. Akinyele's residence at Ibadan. From there, I.B. Akinyele and Babalola joined the delegation to Elisa. At Elisa, he was introduced to the whole conference, and was lodged in a separate room because of his prophetic mission. The representatives began their meeting, and on the agenda were 24 items. The first was the validity of baptism administered to a man with many wives. The second was the issue of divine healing, because some of the members believed in the use of drugs like quinine to cure malaria fever. They were only able to discuss the first item when there was a sudden interruption, which Pastor Adegboyega described thus. The conciliatory talks at Elisa were going on when suddenly a mighty sweeping revival broke out at Faith Tabernacle Congregation Church at Okoy, Elisa. The revival began with the raising of Babalola of a dead child. The mother of the dead child, who was restored to life, went about spreading the news around the town of Elisa, proclaiming that a miracle-working prophet had come to the town of Okoy. This attracted a large number of people to Okoy to see the prophet. According to Pastor Medeiz, many of those afflicted with various diseases who came to Okoy was healed. Many mighty works were performed through the use of the prayer bell, and the drinking of consecrated water from a stream called Omi Ayo, stream of joy. The result was that thousands of people, including traditional religionists, Muslims, and Christians from various other denominations, were converted to the Faith Tabernacle. As there was no space in the church hall, revival meetings were shifted to an open field where men and women from all walks of life, from every part of the country and from neighboring countries, assembled daily for healing, deliverance, and blessings. Ajabanjo testified that within 3 weeks Babalola had cured about 100 lepers, 60 blind people, and 50 lame persons. He further claimed that both the Anglican and Wesleyan churches in Elisa was left desolate because their members transferred their allegiance to the revivalist, and that all the patients in Wesley Hospital, Elisa, abandoned their beds to seek healing from Babalola. Also, many of the schools belonging to the Wesleyan and Anglican churches, as well as to the Baptists and the Roman Catholics, closed down altogether, and there has not been sufficient money again to pay their teachers due to the fact that the majority of their members left to join us. The assistant district officer in Elisa in 1930 wrote that he visited the scene of the revival incognito, and found a crowd of hundreds of people, including a large contingent of the lame and blind, and concluded that the whole affair was orderly. Members of the church made fantastic claims such as, hopeless barren women were made fruitful, women who had been carrying their pregnancies for long years were wonderfully delivered. The dumb spoke and lunatics were cured. In fact, it was another day of Pentecost. Witches confessed and some demon-possessed people were exorcised. But the general superintendent of the Wesleyan Methodist Missionary Society of Nigeria at the time has described the reports as grotesquely inaccurate accounts of the operations of Babalola. This, of course, could be the biased view of a man whose church was said to be the greatest victim of the Elisa revival. A revelation was later given to Ayo Babalola to burn down a big tree in front of OWA's palace. The big tree was traditionally believed to be the rendezvous of witches and wizards. The juju tree was therefore greatly feared, and sacrifices were usually made to the spirits believed to reside in it. There was apprehension that this bold act would result in the instantaneous death of Babalola, since it was expected to arouse the anger of the gods. But to the great amazement of the people, the prophet did not die, but rather continued to wax stronger in the Lord's work. That single event was said to have made even the OWA of Elisa, an important people in the town, fear and respect the prophet. The tidal wave of Babalola's revival spread from Elisa to Ibadan, Ijebu, Lagos, Efinale, Aramoko Ekiti, and Abeokuta. No greater revival preceded that of Babalola. It was popularly held in Christ Apostolic Church (CAC) circles that at one revival meeting, attendance rose to about 40,000. Among the men of faith who came as disciples to Babalola were Daniel Orokoya, Peter Olatunji, who came from Okiho, and Amatund, popularly known as Aladura Amatund, from Aramoko Ekiti. These men drew great inspiration from Babalola. Orokoya went on to reside in Ibadan, where a great revival also broke out at Okbola through him. It was during his Okbola revival that Orokoya reportedly raised a dead pregnant woman. Thank you for watching. Please share and subscribe.